Good morning, grade 10s. Welcome to our business studies class. Grade 10s, we are still looking at forms of ownership, part 8. For those who are just joining us today, welcome to our 8th lesson for the month, and I'm Hector S. Ngosi. Now, grade 10s, we're still looking at your forms of ownership, and these are the relevant learning outcomes. I just want to recap on what we covered yesterday. Yesterday, we looked at a personal liability company and a public company. Then today, we'll be looking at their differences, basically, right? If I were to show you, we looked at personal liability company, public company, characteristics, and the advantages and the disadvantages of your public companies. This is what we covered. It was your personal liability company. We did cover the personal liability company, and we learned that the personal liability company ends with an INC, whereas your public company ends with your LTD, then your private company ends with your PTY LTD. All right. Today, what I want us to look at, I want us to look at the differences, basically, right? So when we look at these differences, basically, I want us to look at the differences between a private company and a public company, right? So what we're going to cover today is this, basically, the difference between a private company, so private company versus public company. This is what I want us to look at today. We know, guys, that under a private company may offer shares to the general. Very important. We can offer shares to the general, right? May no offer shares to the general. So no offer of shares to the general public, right? Because we know under a private company, the shares can only be offered to the existing shareholders of the company. Whereas here it trades shares publicly, right? Publicly, publicly, sorry. Just want to highlight this, doesn't want to highlight, yeah. And through JSE, basically. So they trade their shares publicly through JSE, right? That's the difference between a public company and a private company. Another difference is a private company, shares are not freely transferable. Here, shares are not freely transferable. Here, shares, they are freely transferable, basically, right? It's very, very important because let's say you're a shareholder for a private company and you want to transfer your shares, you want to sell your shares. Under private company, you can't do that, basically, right? It's not easy. But under public company, whenever, any day, you can always resell your shares and stuff like that. Then also looking at a private company, here you can have one director, basically, right? But here you must have a minimum of 3 directors, right? Whereas here it can be 1, right? But because this is a public company, we've got so many shareholders. Therefore, I think that's why you can have a minimum of 3 directors because each will have their role, basically. Then also the other thing that you need to know, boys and girls, is that the name for a private company must end with your proprietary limited, right? Your PTY limited. Sorry. Sorry, I don't know what's happening with my cursor today. I'm trying to, okay, let me try to highlight again. Right? So basically you can have PTY limited, whereas in a public company, you just have limited, right? You just have LTD. So remember here, you can have a proprietary limited, but here it's just limited for a public company. Also, in a private company, your annual financial statements, it's not a must for them to be audited. So not audited. Basically, it's not a must, right? It's not a must at all to audit your financial statements under a private company. Whereas under a public company, you have to audit and you have to publish them, right? Here, you don't have to audit. Also, you don't have to publish them to the public. Here, you have to audit and they must be audited and published, right? So need to be audited and be published. Why? Because in a public company, basically, boys and girls, that's where you get most of your shareholders. And when you publish your annual financial statements, you're attracting more shareholders to come and invest in your company, you know. So whereas here it's an internal thing, a private company, it's an internal thing, or we can say it's an internal company where basically majority of the things are not disclosed to the public, whereas to the public company, we are going to disclose, right? Then again, under private company, it does not need to publish a prospectus as it cannot trade its share publicly. That's what I've just explained now. Because here we're not offering our shares on public, therefore you do not have to publish your shares. Excuse me, you don't have to publish your annual financial statements and your prospectus. Remember, in those prospectus, you also get annual financial statements. Here, you're not obliged because it's more of internal, right? So cannot trade its shares publicly, right? So there is no need of prospectus, right? Whereas here have to register and publish a prospectus with companies and the Intellectual Property Commission, right? Your CIPC, basically, you have to do that, right? It's a must here, right? And you must publish, right? So you have to register. You have to register and publish, right? So here you have to register and publish a prospectus with, so who are you going to register your prospectus with? With this professional body. So your Intellectual Property Commission, it's a professional body basically for companies. Now, another thing is, boys and girls, the last thing, the company is not required to raise minimum subscription or issue minimum shares. Here, you must raise a minimum subscription prior to the commencement of the company, right? So here, no, not required to publish the minimum subscription. Here, it's a must raise the minimum subscription. All right. I hope it makes sense so far, boys and girls, and I hope you are following, right? And please, 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 guys, they love to ask these in an exam, right? They love to ask this in the exam. So please make sure that you are familiar with these forms of ownerships and their difference. You know how to differentiate. Sometimes they can say differentiate between a sole proprietor and a partnership. Sometimes they can say differentiate between a public company and maybe a personal liability company. So you need to know how to differentiate basically the difference between a form of ownership that are closely related, like private company and public company. Very important. This can come as like 5 marks or 6 marks, 3, where they say give 3 differences for each private and public company, 6 marks. So those are your easy marks, guys. And forms of ownership in a business, it's very important because That's where all the cracks starts in. You won't have a business if you don't know what type of business you want to open, and do you want it to be what kind of a form of ownership you want it to be. Do you want to partner with your cousins and open a business, or you want to solely open the business alone? Are you looking to expand on doing a company, or you just doing maybe a small shop that it's going to act as a sole proprietor or whatsoever? So it's up to you. So all the businessmen, guys, they need to know these forms of ownership, basically, right? And also, you need to be familiar also with the forms of ownership, especially as a business person, because even if you want to grow, you know what's required, basically. Okay, let's look at another component now. Now, let's differentiate the difference between a private and a personal liability company, right? So now let's look at a private. So let's look at a private and personal liability company. Let's look at the difference between these two, your private and personal liability company. We know, boys and girls, that for a private company, it has what? It has your PTY Limited. It has your PTY Limited, right? And that's your private company. Whereas your state-owned company, it has state-owned, meaning your personal liability company. It ends with your INC, right? And also here, directors are not personally liable for the debts of the business. So directors are not personally liable, right? Here, directors are personally liable. Sorry. With your personal liability or your state-owned company, actually your directors, they are personally liable for the debts and the business. Hope it makes sense. Now, let's look at a state-owned company. Now, boys and girls, when you look at your state-owned company, its definition is a state-owned company has a government as its major shareholder and falls under Department of Public Enterprise. So state-owned company has the government. So it's that one that includes or that involves those companies that involves government. Basically, we can say it's a government company, right? As its major shareholders falls under the Department of Enterprise. Right. These companies take on the role of commercial enterprise on behalf of the government, basically. That's what we mean by your state-owned companies. All right. Let's move on. Okay, grade 10s. Just looking for my, sorry. I'm looking for my CASA. Okay, let me just hold it like this. Right. Let's look at the characteristics of a state-owned company. How do we see a state-owned company? And remember your characteristics, the things that you need to know about that type of company. So the name ends with letter SOC. That's where you would see whether this is a state-owned company or not. Right. So the ends with, just a second. Yeah, it ends with SOC. Then your state-owned company is listed as a public company. also is listed as a public company. It is owned by the government and operated for profit. So it's owned by the government. More persons may incorporate, and there is no limit on number of shareholders. So no limit, right? So there is no limit on number of shareholders. Also, it requires 3 or more directors and 1 or more shareholders. So it needs, can you say you're state-owned, guys? It's uh, like, it's similar to your, what you call, it's similar to your public company, basically, right? So it's just that the only difference is we know that it ends with SOC, whereas your public company just ends with your LTD. Can you see already this question? Already they can incorporate your state-owned company with your public company. You can differentiate those, or you can compare those, basically, boys and girls. So please make sure that you do understand your stuff and you understand it much more better. Please feel free if you've got any questions. I'm here to help you. You can always WhatsApp me, not WhatsApp me, I mean, but you can always try to email me. Needed the word email, not WhatsApp. Yeah, you can always email me. Then I'll try to answer your questions, guys, as much as I can, right? But for now, let's just recap again and let's just finish the characteristics of a state-owned company. Also, it requires 3 or more directors, right? We spoke about that. Register with the Registrar of Companies by drawing up the MOI. This is the same as your public company. Also, state-owned companies support private businesses by providing infrastructure such as communication service or post office and supply of the electricity or ELSCOM. The state-owned company enjoys financial autonomy because they are to be depend on the government for initial investment. The Act imposes personal liability on directors who are willingly part of carrying off the business in a reckless or fraudulent manner. So, guys, these are your characteristics for a state-owned company. More of them is that a state-owned company also, it is compelled to have its financial statements audited, right? So we know that it's a must. Compelled means like it's a must. It's a must to have their financial statements audited. A state-owned company is compelled to attend an annual general meeting. Also, it's a must for them to attend the annual general meetings. Also, boys and girls, a state-owned company, it is a separate legal personality and have limited liabilities. Remember, boys and girls, if we say someone has limited liabilities, what does it mean? It means that the liabilities are actually limited. Basically, how can I put it? The company, the company's debts are limited liabilities. Does it make sense? Then also, your shareholders have limited liability, right? So even your shareholders have limited liability, which means the company's debt, shareholders are not liable for company's debt. Also, the company is not liable for shareholders' debts, if I can put it that way. Yeah, makes sense now, right? That's what we mean by your state-owned. Okay, boys and girls, that's for me for today. From Monday, we're just gonna finish the chapter and look at the advantages, disadvantages, your non-profit company, its characteristics, its advantages, disadvantages, your cooperatives, characteristics and disadvantages. So from on Monday, we are finishing off this chapter. It was a long chapter. Your what you call your forms of ownership. It was a bit longer chapter, but don't worry, guys. I'm here to help you, and I'm sure now everything makes sense. Please feel free to ask if you've got any questions. From my side, thank you so much, guys. Have a lovely weekend. I'll see you again on Monday. Goodbye.